Hello you guys, I'm Dreamon aka the Belgian Waffle, and this is the review for The Elder Scrolls Online. Now do keep in mind that this video will be twice the length of my normal reviews, since this is a full review of the entire game. So for your convenience, I've put some time links in the description below so that you can easily skip to the parts that you are most interested in. Now the previous video I made of this game was of me ranting a little bit about the subscription fee, because I based my opinion on the beta content, of course. So I felt like this game did not deserve a monthly payment. Now this is the full game review at the moment, and I do have to say that I'm pleasantly surprised by this game. I thought it would have way too few content in order for it to justify the monthly subscription fee, but in fact my opinion has changed quite dramatically. So let's see what made me change my mind. Okay, so let's start off with the graphics and the bugs compared to the beta, shall we? Now in the beta, you could say that the graphics were slightly above average, more towards the style of Skyrim without any mods installed. Now the full game looks absolutely lovely in my opinion. I do not know what happened, but it feels like you're switching over from the 360 version to the PC version of the same damn game. The textures have been improved a lot in resolution and the lighting is gorgeous. In fact, the sun rays in this game that come through the foliage are even better than, for example, in Stalker Call of Pripyat. What amazes me even more is that my old video card, which is an AMD 5800 GT, can even render this game at an average of 50 frames per second on ultra settings. With my new video card, it runs smoothly at 120 frames per second on ultra settings. Now this game is unbelievably stable and optimized if you compare it to other AAA titles that have had so many optimization issues at release. And no need to mention their names, but I think you know which ones I'm talking about. Battlefield 4 and Call of Duty. Now however, since there are only 2 mega servers to let us play on, you will occasionally have some lag in areas that have a lot of things going on at once. Now on the field of quest related bugs, which in the beta it was littered full with it, there have been made a lot of improvements as well. I've not yet seen many quest bugs, and those that I did find could easily be fixed by looking for a solution on the internet or by abandoning the quest and retrying it later. However, bugs like falling through the world did not yet get fixed. In my first 20 levels, I fell through the world twice, and the only way to get out of it is to let yourself die and respawn somewhere else. Or teleport to a group member, of course. Anyway, in total, I think that this game really captures the feeling and look of the Elder Scrolls series. Not to mention, the world is damn huge and waiting to be explored like in any other Elder Scrolls game. To put it simple, this world is huge and you can play the game and explore the world the way you like it. It has 4 huge areas for each faction called provinces, and keeping in mind that there are 3 major factions, this means that there are 12 of those areas or provinces that you can explore, and then there's also the center province called Cyrodiil with the Imperial City in it. Although I am not yet certain if this province is only used for PvP or not, because I've not yet been able to access it for PvE related questing. What I do have to mention though is that not all the factions have an equally interesting storyline or areas to explore. Some factions actually have to do it with barren wastelands instead of beautiful plains and forests, like for example the Altmeri Dominion. So that might be a problem in the long run for the faction versus faction PvP, since many of the players might be seduced into playing the Altmeri Dominion instead. Now if you remember my previous video, then you might have remembered that I was quite disappointed that this game did not have any endgame content to justify that monthly payment. But recently there has been a video released about Craglorn, which proved me wrong in so many levels. And yes, I am not afraid to admit that I was wrong.
It's wrong! It's wrong! It's wrong!
Anyway, this video shows that by the end of this month, there will be tons of content added to this game, with the size of a full expansion you could only compare with, for example, WoW. But I will specify the content of this Craglorn content patch later in this video. Now, together with the fact that your first 30 days are free, even though you are required to make a subscription payment for the second month, it more than justifies the monthly payment from me. Because by the time I actually need to pay, there will have been a huge amount of content added already. Now in terms of questing and exploration content, this game kicks the ass of a lot of other MMOs. The questing is in my opinion revolutionary because not only are the quests not boring at all, they're built around exploration as well. Now what I mean by that is that more than half of the quests are not located within a town or outpost where you need to fetch materials for some idiot. No, in this game you encounter most of the quests by exploring unknown areas where you'll encounter people that are grave robbing, people that need help with treasure hunting, people that have lost a friend and need help finding them, purifying areas of ghosts and other vermin, exploring dungeons for others, even bounty hunting certain bosses. Actually, none of the quests in this game are exactly the same, and that is quite an accomplishment since there are a ridiculous amount of quests in each province. I think I found over 50 quest lines in the first province, and it's 2 islands that are attached to it as well with quests on it. Not to mention they all have voiceovers with tons of additional voice lines per quest, so the amount of work that went into this is just ridiculous. Now some people don't like many voice lines, and I admit that I have skipped some of them myself, but they often reveal valuable information about the quests themselves, like for example the weak points for a boss, or things you have to avoid in order to not die, so it's sometimes in your best interest to listen to them. Although I have to admit that most of these voice lines are often pretty long and are told just way too slow, and it's just way faster for you to just read the text and then skip the voice lines instead of just listening to them.
I love a challenge. Now where's the sport in that? I tell you what, I'll give you 1 book in exchange for your heart or lungs. Your choice. Excellent! Cheese and cabbage for everyone! But wait.
Now I said before that exploration is rewarded, and that's the least you can say of it, because by exploring the world you're not only finding new quests, but also crystals that give you skill points and dungeons that reward you with something extra when you kill the dungeon mini-boss. There is in fact so much to explore that you will most probably will have reached level 50 before you've even started exploring the 4th province of your faction. But even if you've reached the maximum level cap, there are still a lot of reasons to explore it all. Like for example the extra skill points you can gain by finding the crystals and dungeons like I explained before. And if you don't want to do that, then you can simply start with the PvP mode or later this month with the new dungeons. However, becoming level 50 takes a lot of work and time, believe me when I say this. To do this in less than 2 weeks time is something that only the average no-lifer can accomplish. I've been busy with this the first 3 days to non-stop leveling to get to level 20. And I do mean non-stop. I've been playing 8 to 10 hours per day in order to get this done in the first 3 days. So try to imagine what time it takes to gain level 50 if you know that the last 10 levels require an equal amount of experience as the first 25 levels. However, the enjoyment in this game is not really found in reaching maximum level and starting PvP or raiding as soon as possible. No, in fact it is actually found in experiencing the story and exploration of the world. So explorers will absolutely love this game, and power players, or better said power levelers, will not really enjoy this game that much, because the pacing of the game is a lot slower than they're used to, because it needs to take the time to tell the story.
I put a tiny curse on these books, just a small one. Long story short, Shal, you can never read these books. Curse you, mad god! Boring! Be more imaginative, Shal. Like, curse you, mad god! May you become cheese eternally gnawed by skeevers!
However, this slowness is unfortunately also found in the combat. Now let's get one thing straight in advance. The combat system is nice and innovating for an MMO, but for an Elder Scrolls fan it is more of a been there done that experience. In fact, it is a bit slow in my opinion. The reaction speed of, for example, blocking is slow at best, which makes it quite difficult for melee based classes. And sometimes if you're just barely in time to block a power attack of an enemy, the blocking doesn't register at all, making the attack come true in full force, which results in dying a lot if you're in combat with 3 enemies or more. Also, spells and arrows just automatically hit every time, which kind of takes away the need for aiming with ranged classes and is a big disappointment for me, because I was hoping to make a few headshots at least.
It's like boom, headshot, boom, headshot, boom, headshot.
Now, it is not all bad, of course. The combat brings a fresh breeze to the MMO industry and throws the successful formula of, for example, World of Warcraft completely around. And I like it, if I must be honest, because way too many MMOs in the past have just copied the combat system and skill system of World of Warcraft, making it just one more in the big ocean of WoW copycats. And I was getting so fucking bored of that shit in the long run. So don't despair, the combat does have some nice features and is quite original. Now, starting with the basics, you'll have 5 basic skill slots and an ultimate skill slot in a skill bar at the bottom of your screen. These skills can come from a huge number of skill trees, going from your racial skills to weapon skills, guild skills, armor skills, class skills, world skills, and much more. And all of these skill trees got active and passive abilities as well, but if you don't know what to choose at first, because there are so many good skills, then don't despair, because at a certain rank, these skills can be morphed with a special attribute of other spells. This way you can combine some of them. Gaining ranks for those skills are just done basically by using them in combat. So if you don't use certain skills in combat, you won't level them up. Simply as that, you lazy dumb bum. And to go even further, once you've reached level 15, you'll be able to gain a new skill bar that is linked with a secondary weapon slot, which you can switch between during combat. So you can now use, for example, a shield and sword and easily switch between that and a bow and arrow with the press of a button. Now, the skill points you need to spend these skills are gained in 4 different ways: leveling up, completing large quest lines, finding books, and finding crystals, like I explained before. So even at max level cap, you can still keep gaining skill points. In one short sentence, I think this is one of the biggest customizable skill systems I've seen. It's by far the best feature in this game. By the way, I forgot to mention that besides the skill system, you can tweak and change your character in many different ways, because even though you start out with only 4 choices within the classes in the character creation menu, you will be able to change the way your class works in numerous different ways and even step out of the boundaries of that class. What I mean by that is that your class is no longer restricted by one armor type and a few weapon types. For example, if you want a sorcerer that wears heavy armor and a broadsword, then you can do that. If you want a dragon knight that wields a staff and shoots ranged fire spells, then you can do that. In fact, this is one of the ways that you can build some of the strongest fire mages through a melee class called the Dragon Knight. So, you can do all kinds of crazy shit with your class. It's exactly like they marketed this game. Play the way you like. Something that adds even more to that formula is the crafting, which is just like the skill trees, enormously large and complex, but in the good way of being complex, of course. The crafting has so many variants and possible ways to go that it blows your mind. For example, you can research a huge number of crafting skills for each individual weapon or armor type, but each of these skill lines for those armor or weapon types are extremely long and take ages to research. And I'm not kidding here. I think I've heard that it can take up to 60 days to complete researching an entire skill tree in crafting, and that's just one of the weapon types in the blacksmithing profession alone. You will have the same thing with clothing, woodworking, enchanting, and all the other crafting professions. Whoa, I think I've just made my own head explode. Now, this is one of the lesser aspects of the game in my opinion. The social aspect of the game is not that great, even though you have the possibility to join 5 guilds at the same time and have group finding features in the game. But the feeling that there is a need to socially interact with players is just not there for me. This is mainly thanks to the fact that none of the dungeons are instants for groups only, besides 1 or 2 in every province, which is linked to the Undaunted quest line. This means that absolutely anybody can walk in your dungeon and steal your kills, and this also eliminates the need for stealth by many classes, like for example the Nightblade. Now, you may think that this way you're constantly fighting alongside with other players, and yes, that is true, but there is absolutely no need to interact between them, because everybody is just doing their own thing and there is no need to even start a group, even when world events like the Dolmen occur, which are basically the large rings with change in the skies. People will just automatically run towards that and start fighting in it. People in this game are, because of this problem, even too lazy to type something in the area chat, let alone read it. So I'm sorry to say this, but I don't really see the need for clans besides the fact that they're useful for trading. Also, the normal quest lines you do not allow random people to jump in and help you, because you're all in different phases, which other people who are not in the same stage of that quests cannot see. So you're isolated from the rest of the players if you're in a different questing phase, unless you're in a group, of course. So the whole game feels like a single player experience to me, except for when you're actively doing high tier dungeons and PvP, and perhaps later this month even veteran dungeons. But while you're leveling, I do not see much social interaction between those players. But I think that's a sacrifice you'll have to make when you're on a mega server, because then it's quite impossible to instance every single player to a single dungeon like you have in other TES games, because then this mega server would have to host dungeon instances for thousands of players at once, which is quite impossible in my opinion. So as long as ZeniMax Online Studios is holding on to this mega server concept, I think we'll just have to learn to live with it. Now, in terms of endgame content, I was very skeptical about this game in the past. It was actually my #1 argument for not buying this game, and the monthly subscription fee not being justified because of this. And this feeling I had was mainly due to the beta and the lack of released info and footage at that time, which both gave me a very bad impression towards the endgame content. I even think that for me and many others it would have been a lot better if the Craglorn video was released before the early access started, because it would have made it a lot easier for many of us to pre-order this game if we knew that Craglorn would be added to the game later this month. Now, for those who haven't paid attention and didn't listen well enough in the previous points, the Craglorn content patch is free and will be added at the end of this month. It will add tons of 4-man dungeons and 12-man dungeons, together with veteran ranks and the new PvP mode. However, until the Craglorn content patch gets released, we'll have to make do with a few moderate dungeons and the normal faction versus faction PvP, which is very comparable to the world versus world PvP from Guild Wars 2, but with one major difference: it is designed a lot better in my opinion. Now, in a beta, many of the complaints about this PvP mode were the lack of proper transportation, because it was such a long walk after you died, which is now somewhat fixed in the full game, but it can still be a long walk, since all of Cyrodiil will be at your disposal to fight against each other, which is basically the entire province you had at your disposal while playing Oblivion. Of course, all these 3 factions will be battling with each other at the same time, and your faction can conquer many of the cities within this province with the help of siege weapons. These conquered cities and outposts can then be used to build markets, which are used for trading. Each individual player will also acquire alliance or faction points, and the player with the most points of the faction that conquers the Imperial City will be named Emperor, which is a nice little extra for those who want to devote a lot of time to PvP. Now, all of this may seem like a rip-off from the World vs World mode in Guild Wars 2 or the Guild vs Guild mode from Age of Conan, but in fact it feels for me like it's so much more. I think it has to do with the fact that it feels more alive and better designed. The terrain lends itself perfectly for ambushes, blockades and covered locations for placing siege equipment, whereas in Guild Wars 2, for example, it was always more of a straight-on fight where the possibilities to outflank your enemies was very limited, which often ended in you being forced to knock on the front door of the enemy stronghold. You would also see a lot of huge zergs of dozens or hundreds of people clashing into each other, while as in TES Online you will more often see smaller recon units or raiding parties. And I think this has to do more with you being able to have full control of your character's abilities and movement thanks to the innovative combat system, while traditional MMO combat systems only allow for a very linear approach to tackle certain objectives or siege large constructions. Now, in terms of the new PvP mode that's gonna be released with Craglorn, there isn't much known of this. But I am already happy that you're making an effort for a new PvP mode. So at the moment the endgame content is quite limited, but by the end of this month there will be more than enough to keep you busy for a few months. By the way, the players that love to play as werewolf or vampire in the previous Elder Scrolls games will have a nice surprise waiting for them in this game. Well, even though this game is a lot of fun and maybe soon we'll have the content to back up the monthly payment, not everything in this game is all sunshine and rainbows. There are still a lot of issues I have with it. For example, the combat is a little slow in reaction speed, arrows and spells have an auto aim, the social interactivity between players is not really there, and of course I find it ridiculous that they have to hide content like the Imperial race and changeable factions behind a paywall while they already are charging a monthly fee. However, these things are not really game breaking, besides perhaps maybe the social interactivity. But if you take your time with this game and listen to the story and feel like exploring a shitload of content together with nice graphics, huge customization and an innovative combat system, then this is definitely a game for you. I got to admit that the full game has actually won me over after my last ranting video of this game, especially due to the upcoming release of Craglorn. So now comes the big question: with Craglorn's release in the back of my head, will TES Online justify the monthly payment? Perhaps yes, even though it is still an outdated way to get into the wallet and pockets of your customers, but with some slightly more content I might find it justifiable indeed. Now before I end this video, I got one last word of advice for you guys. You should not step into this game by comparing it to World of Warcraft or thinking this will be the next WoW killer. If you lower your expectations a little bit, then you might actually enjoy this game a lot, but don't expect any miracles. It is a great game that honors the old TES series formula in the best way it can without damaging the MMO aspect of the game. So I hate to admit it, but this is actually a great game. However, I still think that with everything in mind, this game will still go free to play in the end. It will just take a little bit longer now that the new content is coming up. So it is still up to you to decide if you want to pay monthly for it or not, but at least you got 30 days for free to try it. So let me know what you think. Is this game worth it for you or not? Leave a comment and a like. My name is Dreamon, the Belgian Waffle. I've been your host for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and I'll see you guys next time. By the way, if you guys are able, please share and favorite these videos if you're already a subscriber. It would help me out a lot.